That is the logical conclusion of patriarchy theory. To believe in patriarchy theory is to justify its existence. Now, unless we want to acknowledge the logical conclusion of patriarchy theory, then maybe it's time we did a little bit of revision between the current and historical power relations between the sexes. That maybe women had other forms of power that men didn't. As the saying goes, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And maybe, just maybe, men's side of the grass isn't as green as we've always been led to believe. Men are not monsters. Men and boys are human beings too. It's time to stop accepting our second-class citizenship, and it's time to stop apologising for being men. Yeah. We simply cannot address any of these issues by kowtowing to fiction. It's in our interest to compromise where we can. And it's in our interest to not compromise where we can't. The patriarchy? It's a lie. It is the great lie. Feminism is cancer. Speaker is Mike Stevenson, aka DoctorRandomercam. I assume you've all heard of them then. Okay, DoctorRandomercam. Mike is a comedian, a musician, irreverent cartoonist, and general tinker of the arts. 5 years ago, in the entertainment industry, encroaching collapse of creative freedom, he focused his attention on matters of identity, politics, and men's rights. In his quest to find the last bastion of people with a sense of humour, he found Honey Badger Radio in 2014, and has been a regular contributor ever since. Now, with an online following of over 50,000 subscribers, he has attended live events, meetups in 13 different cities across 3 continents. Mike will be discussing why men are funny, yet not happy. Let's give a round of applause for
You'll notice I'm raising my voice for the sake of the live audience who may not hear me as well as you can right now. Hi folks, you're going to be on YouTube.
I'm DoctorRandomercam's audience.
Thanks, Adam. I'm afraid I can't offer you the wage of a normal cameraman, but you could get your name on. I'll mention you in it. Do you mind your name being mentioned in the YouTube video?
Yes, Adam Bulford and men's rights community. There we go.
All right. This is what's known in comedy circles. This is what's known in comedy circles as the warm-up bit, folks. I'm priming you all. And that's not a form of sexual harassment. But it is now! Alright. Where did I... Another good thing. Normally in comedy you don't get to bring up a script like this, so you just have to remember things. But yeah, you'll notice I'm following Milo's trend of using the good old tablet instead of 20th century sheets of paper. Alright. I was at a gig once in London. A lot of my stories start like this. You meet a lot of unexpected people at gigs in London. And one time I met comedian and podcaster Richard Herring, whom some of you may have heard of. We both just happened to be at a dive bar at the same time, and I was like, "You're Richard Herring?" And he was like, "Yeah, I am." And evidently he was. And we got chatting over a pint or two, as you do, and we eventually got onto the subject of why we went into comedy. Boobs, he said. I said, yeah, but seriously. And he said, no, seriously, I went into comedy to get laid. Let's be honest about it. Why does anyone do anything to survive and ultimately reproduce? That's not how he said it. Rich isn't quite as articulate as that. And he asked me, well, why did you get into comedy if not for the girls? And I had to think about it for a bit. And I said, you know when you're at the hospital and you're visiting like an elderly relative or something, and they're going to die, and you know they're going to die, and they know they're going to die, but there's no amends to be made, there's no problems to be fixed, but you feel this powerlessness, feel this overwhelming sense of, I wish there was something I could do, I wish I could study medicine for 7 years and find a cure for this, but you'll be dead before I can fill out the application form. Come to think of it, I'll be dead before I can fill out the application form. You know how it is in the NHS? And then they laugh at the silly thing you just said, and then you're both laughing, and the weight sort of lifts. It lifts from them, it lifts from you, and you're in a moment where nothing matters. Not life, not death, not anything. And they give you this smile like you've never seen before, as if to say, thank you. Look, I know I'm on the way out. I've accepted it. I've had a good life. There's no reason to be sad, and I don't want to make anyone else sad. I want to go out smiling. Tell me another one. That's why I do comedy, because even when there's nothing I can do, there's still something I can do. Do you know what I mean, Rich? Have you ever... And it's like, no, boobs are better. Now, that story about Richard Herring is not true. But what it tells us about Richard Herring is true. I'd like to thank Stuart Lee for the format of that joke, but I think I told it better. It's the 19th of November, Rich. The 19th of November, in case you've forgotten. Hi, my name's Mike. I'm here to tell you why funny people kill themselves. It's because most funny people are men, and most people who kill themselves are men. It's correlation. All right, good talk. We have a Q&A. I should do some clarifying. Because arguably there is something sort of causal in there. First of all, men and women are different. Sorry if I burst anyone's bubble there, but it's true. It's like peacocks and peahens are different. But human males don't typically find a mate using displays of beauty, they do it using displays of ability and personality. A woman can arouse a man simply by looking like a woman, but for a man to arouse a woman, he needs to make her smile. Which can be achieved by fighting all the other men and winning, into that sort of thing, but it can also be achieved by telling a joke, by creating that moment when nothing matters. And to hark back on Belinda's point, that might just be how we became a pair-bonding species instead of just a tournament species. We evolved a mating ritual that doesn't necessarily involve brutal competition between males, thereby leaving men's competitive nature free to work on something productive rather than just reproductive. And boom, we have civilization. I thought if somebody throw a bone in the air. So no, women are not just as funny as men. If they were, we wouldn't have thumbs. In a way, it's an extension of the gender roles given to us by nature. Men provide resources, women receive them. Men provide humour, women react to it. Selectively speaking, it's men's job to be funny and it's women's job to be happy. That's not exactly a picnic for women either, by the way. Women who are constantly angry or miserable are less likely to find a committed partner. Men who are boring and cheap are unlikely to find a committed partner. By and large, I say men are under more pressure there. As if you're expected to be resourceful and funny, that's not easy. Being resourceful often leaves you too tired to be funny, and in many cases too dead to be funny. But nor is it necessarily a bed of roses if you're expected to wear a veil of happiness when you're not really happy. Matter of fact, it's excruciating. So it's hardly surprised that women kill themselves too. Have you heard this one? Suicide is the coward's way out. You're just avoiding your responsibilities. It's a brilliant joke. It's an absolute corker, don't get me wrong. But as a serious statement, it's the most false thing you could possibly say about suicide victims, and the most dangerous thing you could say to suicidal people, because it's so false. If people kill themselves out of fear of responsibility, fear of commitment, then they kill themselves before a job interview, or when they take out a mortgage, or the day before their wedding, or when they're about to have a child, but they don't. In reality, in quite stark reality, people don't kill themselves before they get married, they kill themselves after they get divorced. They kill themselves after they lose their children and their job and their community. They don't kill themselves to avoid responsibility, they kill themselves when they have no responsibilities left, when they've all been taken away, when their spouses don't need them anymore, their children don't need them anymore, no one needs them anymore. A lot of people can't handle not being needed. Men in particular, as I just said, are biologically soft-wired to make people smile, to make women smile. So when the day comes for society and all its legal facets to say to a man, you don't get to make people smile anymore, is it any wonder he can't go on? And is it any wonder that comedians, people whose profession, whose bread and butter is to make people smile, are even more vulnerable to this condition? This harrowing sense of, I can't make people smile anymore. What's the point? That's a good question, as far as I can tell. If I can't smile and I can't make people smile, if I can't improve other people's experience or understanding of the world, then what is even the point? It's not an impossible question, but it is jolly difficult. So, people kill themselves, and over 70% of these people are men. Is this a problem? Not necessarily. This is the part of the speech where I shock you with my cold, dark heart, but no, absolute equality is not my business. There are biological reasons men die sooner. There are biological reasons men earn more money than women. So, is it not true that there might be biological reasons men kill themselves more? Testosterone makes you take risks. Risks, by their very nature, result in successes and failures. In a perfectly equitable system, men will still account for most of the extreme successes and most of the extreme failures. So no, I do not wish to reduce the suicide ratio to a tight 50-50 between men and women, because I'm not a social justice warrior. I am not interested in engineering human beings into a state of indistinguishability. Nor do I want to reduce the number of suicides to 0. I am a human rights advocate. I would like every man and every woman to have the right to take their lives into their own hands, and that includes taking their deaths into their own hands. I know it seems like the virtuous thing to say is that the ideal number of suicides per year would be 0, but I can't commit to that. If someone has a terminal or neurodegenerative illness that they know is only going to leave them in pain or dementia in the last few years of their lives, and they would rather just blow their own heads off than become a vegetable, then who am I to tell them it would be ideal if they didn't? Who am I to say, we want that 0 counter, we want to get that gold star on our suicide report for this year, so be a darling and sit there for years while your brain turns to mush. It's for the greater good. So you can't expect perfect ratios from humans. We're not perfect. And you certainly shouldn't enforce perfect ratios. So I don't have a number for you. I can't say to you, hit this number of suicides and this ratio of suicides and I'll be happy. All I can really say is the suicide rate is too damn high. And it is. I don't take a sort of scenic route to this conclusion, but that's all it is. The suicide rate is too damn high. And if it's just about the rate rather than the ratio, then where are my priorities? Because lung cancer kills 4 times as many men as suicide. Heart disease kills even more. Why am I not doing a talk about the dangers of fatty foods and smoking? Well, for one thing, death by disease is sort of a toggle switch. It either happens or it doesn't. No one goes I think I might try to die of a heart attack this week. One goes, I think I might try to contract cancer. Whereas death by suicide is less of a toggle switch and more of a slider. You don't wake up one day and notice a suicidal rash on your elbow. You know? I've got to the doctor to be told, it's bad news, you have suicidal tendencies. Did you know? See this shadowy region in your frontal lobe, that's suicidal. Right. You know about this condition long before your doctor does. Just like it doesn't simply toggle on, it doesn't simply toggle off. You find a cure. There is no cure, only treatment. The ascent out of it is just as arduous as the descent into it. So like I said at the beginning, I do this because there's something I can do. I'm not going to find a cure for cancer anytime soon. And I can hardly tell an old guy with a terminal disease that he shouldn't kill himself. I've never been in that position. But I can talk to perhaps young people who are suicidal despite no physical health problems, who incidentally account for the majority of suicides, men between the ages of 20 and 50. As many of you may know, it is in fact the leading cause of death for men in that alarmingly wide age range. That, by the way, does not sound natural or biologically accountable to me. The idea that suicide is the leading cause of death for any demographic, let alone young people, I'd say that's an indication that something has gone seriously wrong and avoidably wrong. You wouldn't think 20-year-old men and 50-year-old men would have much in common, but there you go. Why are you killing yourself? Because I'll never get to make my children smile again. What about you? Because I'll never get to smile again. Yeah, that one never gets a huge laugh. I mean, you have to be honest. Maybe we can help each other, eh? The 20-year-olds and the 50-year-olds. Take it from me, I'm a 35-year-old male. I'm right at the centre point of the danger zone. I've made it this far and I still haven't succumbed to my leading cause of death. And though I've never been 80 years old and terminally ill, I have been young and suicidal, as perhaps many of us have. 18 years old, never had a girlfriend, never had a job, never had any skills worth speaking of. Convinced that I'll never be able to smile or make anyone else smile. I was grumpy and cynical. A lot of young people don't understand that it's okay to be grumpy and cynical. And in fact, it can be quite funny to be grumpy and cynical. One thing I can recommend is writing things down, if you're that way inclined. Writing things down in a grumpy and cynical way. Write things down and then never show them to anyone. You'll be convinced that the things you're writing are terrible and unreadable. And you're right, they will be. Don't write to entertain people. Don't even write to entertain yourself. Write your worst self-indulgent, self-hating emo poetry, just so you can see your thoughts sort of in front of you, formulated in some way. And then screw them up and burn them if you want to. Or just keep them in a box or something. But if you keep going, if you keep writing, there's a chance that maybe the 500th thing you write will make you smile. Or at least make you content with what you've written. Just because it's well crafted. You'll develop an appreciation for things that are well crafted because you've seen so many things that aren't. And if you carry on beyond that, maybe the 1000th thing you've written will make someone else smile. But that doesn't need to be your goal. Making other people smile. You shouldn't need a goal. A lot of pop psychologists will tell you, write down your goals and try to incriminately achieve them. I disagree. Write whatever the hell you like. Draw whatever disturbing pictures you like. Waste your time if you want to. They say life is a journey, not a destination, and it's true. But it doesn't have to be a journey either. Dawdle, if you like. Sit on the side of the road and watch insects, if you like. And if you can't be bothered, then by all means kill yourself. Sorry, but it's an important thing to leave that option open to people. Especially when they feel like that's the only option they have left. The last thing you want to do is make them feel like they don't have that option either. It's only going to push them further in. Suicide is itself the result of an ultimatum, usually brought on by society or the family courts or whatever. But you can't fix that with another ultimatum. Men devote their lives to their children and their wives and their career and their communities. That's why when you take those things away from a man, he feels like he has no life left, because he's never really lived it for himself. And, the most important point is it's wrong to take those things away from men. We should not be legally facilitating the separation of men from their families. A man who works for a family deserves that family. But a man deserves a reason to live, with or without a family. I will never say to a man, you can't kill yourself, you have a wife and children to look after. Because at some point, he might turn around and say, I don't have those things anymore. I don't have anyone to look after. Now what? And the answer you've already given him is, yeah, all right, now you can kill yourself. The only way out is to conclude, in your own conscience, that a man does get to take his own life, whenever he wants, because it's his life. That sounds harsh in theory, but in practice it's not. Telling him that is not going to encourage him to kill himself. On the contrary, it's the only way he's ever going to value himself. And as a man, you're going to need to value yourself, because there's a very good chance no one else will. Well, it's not the only element in the soup. Education is important. Growing up with a dad in early life is as important to mental health as getting to see your children in midlife. The problems are mostly surface problems, and they are to be tackled legally. But I'll let the other speakers fill you in on those details. They'll do a much better job than me. I'm not really qualified for any of this. I'm not a real doctor, it's just my username. I'm not a psychologist or a neurologist. I'm not a judge or a lawyer. I'm not a social worker or a teacher or a student or even a father. I'm not an expert on anything, if I'm perfectly honest, and I have no idea how to stop people from killing themselves. I just stick around and make people laugh. Thanks.
Do I have the honour and privilege of introducing Mr. Mike Buchanan?
The first time I met Mike Buchanan, it was in the Republican Roman army of the Second Punic War. I turned to him and said, Mike, how old are you? Second Punic War? And he replied, how do you know my name? This is the first time we've met, as you've just established. I said, oh, sorry, I was talking to myself. Oh, he said, in that case, I'm going to start the world's first political party focused on the rights of men and boys. I'm going to call it Justice for Men and Boys and the Women Who Love Them. And I'm going to become an organisational dynamo for the men's rights movement and a linchpin in every international conference of men's issues. I said, that sounds like a good plan, Mike. By the way, how come we're both called Mike? That's a Hebrew name, and this is the Republican Roman army of the Second Punic War. Don't worry. It's not historically accurate, nothing is anymore. Oh, you can, isn't it?
Thank you, Mike, for that. The last time I saw Mike was a few months ago in Australia at the 3rd International Conference on Men's Issues. And he asked if he could interview me, along with, he was interviewing other speakers, and very rashly I agreed. So the first question, I'll take it to my grave. He asked, well, when the film was rolling, he said, Mike, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate women? 9 or 10? And it went downhill from there, I'll tell you. Thank you, Mike. For the past couple of years, our #1 campaign has been to end the non-therapeutic circumcision of male minors in the UK, or male genital mutilation, MGM. And I've handed out some leaflets today that we were handing out outside the Tory Party conference about 3 weeks ago. We refer to it as male genital mutilation, deliberately to draw a parallel with female genital mutilation, FGM. Now, some people get upset by our drawing that parallel, But the truth is that all MGM is more injurious than most FGM. And I've had people, men and women, at conferences and at protests walk away, I mean, that is just simply a biological fact. But to me, it's an interesting indicator of the empathy gender gap that people would refuse to think that's even possible. Now, almost all Jewish, sorry, I was going to say Jewish boys, but in line with who's the guy? Richard, the God Delusion. Dawkins. Yes, I read this last night. I thought I've actually put the expression Jewish babies, and so I shall say almost all Jewish babies. I've done it again. Almost all babies born to Jewish parents are circumcised at 8 days old, while boys born to Muslim parents tend to be circumcised at a later age, but significantly always before puberty. So they don't get to realise how much less pleasure they will enjoy during sex, following the loss of the nerve-rich foreskin. It's estimated that around 90%, 90, of the nerve endings which give men pleasure during sex are to be found in the foreskin. Now, we've been pursuing a number of approaches to ending MGM, including street protesting, but I'll focus on legal approaches in this talk. Some people remain doubtful about the claim that we make all the time that MGM is illegal, and often because they mistakenly consider that the Crown's refusal to bring prosecutions is evidence of legality. Well, the Crown doesn't bring prosecutions for the crime of paternity fraud either, never has. And MGM is just one of many areas where males are treated absolutely appallingly by the criminal justice system in comparison with females. Male minors in the UK have fewer rights to bodily integrity than dogs. The penalties for illegal docking of dogs' tails include a maximum of 2 years imprisonment and an unlimited fine. Conversely, if you wanted to set yourself up as a circumciser of male minors today, you could, nothing's stopping you. You wouldn't need to undergo any training, and you could carry out the procedures in the most unsanitary conditions because no checks on your premises will be made. You won't even need to be registered. And if the male minor dies as a result of your work, even if you're prosecuted, the charge will be manslaughter. And if you're found guilty, you'll receive a suspended sentence. Such is the value placed on male lives by the British state. The claim that MGM is illegal has been made over many years by legal experts, and in 2013, at a conference on genital autonomy, a British human rights lawyer explained that MGM is a crime under the Offences Against the Person Act, being at least actual bodily harm, and almost certainly grievous bodily harm, for which the maximum penalty is life imprisonment. It would require a parliamentary override to be legal, and that has never existed. There are no exemptions to the law for religious or cultural considerations, so all the people who carry out MGM in the UK are criminals. Some of them, we calculate, earn upwards of £4 or £5 million over their careers. So it's our conviction that at the moment the most promising line of attack is a legal one, and I'd like to take you quickly through 3 potential legal actions in the UK today. The most important one, and the only one of the 3 which has made it into mainstream media, relates to Dr. Balvinder Mehat, a Nottingham-based doctor who we believe to be Sikh. 5 years ago, a young woman in Nottingham who'd had a relationship with a Muslim man and became pregnant. The relationship broke up before the boy was born, and the mother had sole parental responsibility for the boy from the outset. When he was 3 months old in 2013, he spent a weekend, I think over Eid, with his father and paternal grandmother. When he was returned to his mother, he was in some distress. The mother opened his nappy and was horrified to find it soaked with blood, following a circumcision carried out earlier that day by Dr. Mehat, who had not obtained her permission. The boy had been taken for the procedure by his father and paternal grandmother, and he has suffered medical problems as a result of that circumcision to this day, and he's now 4. I'd like to ask Tim Alford to stand up briefly at this point. Tim is a Nottingham-based campaigner against MGM, and he's done an absolutely amazing job supporting the mother in her battle to have Dr. Mehat and her son's father and grandmother prosecuted. Tim, thank you. Frankly, I doubt that the mother could have endured the stress, the incredible stress over the last 4 years without Tim's support. I was with Tim and the mother a year or two ago when the police visited the mother at her home. The behaviour of the police was shocking, to put it mildly. One policewoman telling the mother that her own husband was circumcised and she preferred it that way. Long story short, the police and the CPS refused to press charges. And that's where the matter remained until Simo Jahal, a female human rights lawyer, took an interest in the case. And to our utter amazement, with the benefit of hindsight, she successfully managed to secure legal aid for the mother to pursue a case. We were just astonished. So in May of this year, Simo wrote to the police demanding that they review their decision not to prosecute. And in June, the police arrested Dr. Nihat on suspicion of inflicting grievous bodily harm with intent, which you may recall as maximum sentence of life imprisonment, and also arrested the boy's father and grandmother on suspicions of conspiracy. 2 or 3 weeks ago, the same policewoman who told the boy's mother that she was pleased her husband was circumcised broke the news to the mother that charges would not be brought. She became very upset. I'll now read out an extract from a piece on the BBC website following the decision not to press charges. Simo Jahal is appealing the Crown Prosecution Service decision and has written a 24-page letter outlining numerous defects in the decision-making process and evaluation of this case. She told the BBC, the decision lacks any semblance of a considered and reasoned decision and is flawed and irrational. If prosecutors do not review their decision within 14 days, she said, the mother will be obliged to take the matter before the administrative court for a determination of these very important issues, which need to be resolved not only for her personal case, but also for the wider public interest issues that the case raises. And that's the end of the BBC extract. We're currently about halfway through that 14-day period, so hopefully there'll be some news soon. I turn to the other 2 potential legal cases relating to MGM, in which I'm personally involved. And I'd like here to recognise our lawyer, Ian Tynes, who's been crucial in developing the defence. He can't be here tonight, unfortunately, but I'll send him a copy of this footage. On the drive down to a protest in Parliament last year, I called Ian to say I was thinking of obstructing the traffic in the square as a protest against the inaction of the CPS and the police to bring prosecutions for MGM. He recommended I didn't do it, so naturally I ignored his advice. And I was... So I was duly arrested after I was about to stand in front of passing vehicles on the 4-lane highway for a second time. That's quite invigorating, I can tell you. My thanks to Ewan and Mike, who are with us today, for filming that. And the video's on our YouTube channel. So a week or 2 later, I was informed that the charge of obstructing the highway would be made, and duly appeared at Hammersmith Magistrates Court. And my defence was a very strong one. The CPS lawyer was utterly hopeless, so naturally I was found guilty. The law is truly an ass. I appealed to Isleworth Crown Court, presented the same strong defence, in fact I strengthened an even stronger one. The second CPS lawyer was even more incompetent than the first, so again I was found guilty. or my appeal was dismissed, I should say. So I applied to him to have a new appeal at the High Court in the Strand, where we were today, where 3 judges would hear the case, and we think that's our best chance there, 3 judges. Now, the judge agreed in a letter written in March, 8 months ago, to grant my appeal to the High Court, and 2 days after he wrote that, the CPS sent a letter, which I got a copy of, informing me that they had requested that the court deny me the charge to appeal to the High Court on the grounds that my application was, in their words, frivolous and groundless. I've heard nothing more from any courts or the CPS since, despite sending them reminders. The wheels of justice turn unbelievably slowly. The final case concerns a Dr. Joseph Spitzer, a Jewish moil or ritual circumciser who claims proudly to have carried out thousands of circumcisions. He heads the British organisation, the Initiation Society, and his clinic is based in Stamford Hill, an area with the country's largest population of Orthodox Jews. With Ian's help again, I prepared and presented papers for a private prosecution against Dr. Spitzer at Highbury Magistrates Court, and after a lengthy delay, the judge responded saying we needed to have evidence of procedures Spitzer had performed on named individuals, where and roughly when. Now that's proving problematical, as you might expect, And the Jewish Chronicle refused my optimistic request to take up a full-page advert asking people to come forward. So I may have to resort to door-to-door leafleting in the Stamford Hill area, and if anybody would care to join me for that, that would be fantastic. I turn now, I'm almost done, I turn now to the issue of human rights and ethics. MGM breaches UN and EU human rights acts, including the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And a couple of years ago I wrote to Anne Longfield, OBE, Child's Commissioner for England, pointing out that a claim on the homepage of her website was a blatant lie, that children in England enjoy all the rights in that UN convention. She refused to remove the claim from the website, and in response to my freedom of information request related to MGM, a response showed a historical complete lack of interest in the subject in the organisation she leads, and still leads. And on the subject of ethics, possibly the most insightful writer on the issues of the ethics of both MGM and FGM is the ethicist Brian at Oxford University, and he's explained at length why both forms of genital mutilation are equally unethical. Well, that's all I have to say on MGM today, but I'd like to end by saying that I'm hoping to announce next week that the 4th International Conference on Men's Issues will definitely be going ahead in London next July 20th. That's the weekend after the World Cup ends, so hopefully we'll still be jubilant after England's unexpected win over Germany in the final. Thank you. Thank you. You truly are too kind. Who said we are? It's my pleasure now to introduce Steve Moxon. Steve's a researcher and writer focusing on the biological roots of human sociality, with a special interest in the differential roles of each sex. He first came to my attention in 2009 as the author of the book The Woman Racket, which I heartily recommend to anybody who hasn't read it. It was the same year that I read Professor Baron Cohen's The Essential Difference, about gender differences in human brains. And I can honestly say that those two books changed my life. He was more recently the author of Sex Differences Explained, From DNA to Society, Purging Gene Copy Errors, and he's the author of many other papers, principally in the New Male Studies Journal. From realising that feminism is the truth-inverting core of identity politics, a backlash against the masses for declining to act according to Marxist prescription, a search for comprehensive refutation, too many long words here, comprehensive refutation led to cross-disciplinary synthesis of rapidly emerging science of profound sex differences, or dichotomy, in a revolutionary new understanding of men and women. His talk tonight, Domestic Violence Has Turned Inside Out, draws on a new scientific understanding of the sexes, which reveals domestic violence is overwhelmingly perpetrated by women, and that this profound new analysis should be used to attack feminist advocacy head-on of allowing charges of Me Tooism. Gentlemen and ladies, Steve Moxon.
One step louder, yeah, okay. We're often told that 40% of DV partner violence victims are men. This is complete rubbish. It's a headline stat which is meaningless. Ignore it. We're not going to get anywhere with the MRA strategy peddling that. We're just going to be accused of Me Tooism and being ungallant, to use an old word. So, to start off, just think about these very strange stats and facts about partner violence. Females are much more violent partners than to same-sex others, whereas it's the other way around. Men are much more violent to same-sex others than partners. That, straight away, should very much surprise you. Cross-sex violence, if you look at this, is at least 3 times as likely female to male than male to female, right? And in the absence of any same-sex violence, women are 3 times more likely to project partner violence, right? To get a handle on the issue, forget common couple violence, mutual, you need to look at unilateral partner violence. And all studies, there's been lots of meta-studies on this, show that female perpetration is at least twice as much as men. And in vignette studies, hypothetical studies, where you examine what's going on here, where the male is a victim, women see it as less serious, they see the victim as more responsible, they're more likely to ignore the situation and attribute perpetration to males much more than to females. If you look at chronic rather than acute partner violence victims, only 6% of men saw the partner violence against them as a crime, compared to 39% of women. That's a 6 or 7-fold sex differential. Now, if you look at police reports, obviously, 3 times as many reports by women than men. If you look at crime surveys, okay, it's not face-to-face, self-completion questionnaires, it's still about 1.5 sex differential. Ordinary survey, it reverses. Suddenly, it's 2 times the other way. So there's a 6-fold change in the sex differential in relative proportion according to sex, depending just on this mode of reporting. What's called in the trade demand characteristics. We don't know how many aspects of male morality about partner violence this keys into, but it gives you a window on how completely hopeless are all these stats. The basic problem being there's no baseline, right? So the stats are very soft. Nothing can be quantified. So if you look at victimisation, being a victim, obviously there's male underreporting. I hardly need to go into reasons for that, multiple. There's also female overreporting, and you get a handle on that from what I've just told you about how females do in these being extras. As regards perpetration, male overreporting, very likely they feel that partner violence is inappropriate, a low threshold considering what is an act of violence, think they should have been self-inhibited. On the other hand, they could feel shame, that could go either way. Female underreporting the perpetration, well, yes, as well, they see the violence as not categorisable as such. Self-defence, when usually it's just parrying male attempts to actually restrain her, of course. And though maybe they feel no shame either. It's a bit more complicated, but there's an overall synergy in the underreporting and overreporting, both of perpetration and victimisation, which all goes in the same direction. And of course, what the studies are doing here, they're looking at self-report, but they're pairing up partners. So they're looking at the reciprocal perpetration and victimisation across partners. But these are going to be, at least to some extent, independent of each other. So it's basically impossible to cross-check. I said there's no baseline. If you look at what you might call more hard stats, partner violence related, injury-related rates, the problem here, of course, is that a combination of male upper body strength compared to female and the sex differential in body frame weakness, you see much weaker body frames. Louise Dixon, formerly Birmingham University, did a study on this, and she calculated the expected sex differential in injury rates, assuming equal rates of perpetration both ways, should be 20 to 1. 20 times as much injury in females as men. The actual studies show that it's either 50-50, slightly more than women, or with serious injuries, it's actually much more men. So if you weight in terms of series of injury, then it's actually... So the upshot of that is the effect size sort of multiplies, rather than 20 to 1, it goes up to 40-50 to 1. It's off the scale. Now, you get noise in data in social sciences. Anything that's 90-95%, that's basically a complete one-way phenomenon. So something very, very strange is going on here if you accept anything at all about the feminist model. And other hard stats, possibly partner homicide, you would think are hard stats, but they're not. I mean, even the homos admit that 30-40% male victims. Study by Davies 2010 actually calculates males in the majority of spousal homicide victims. Because the problem is, most female perpetrations by proxy, lover, male friend, male relative, hired hitman, or by subterfuge, disguised poisoning, contrived accident, contrived suicide. Detection's rare, prosecution very difficult. Recording often by a third party, because it's a third party in the crime. He gets recorded as the perpetrator, not the woman who instigated it. So it's not a hard stat. The likelihood is spousal homicide is far greater by women than males, but we can't get a handle on it. So overall, there's a huge hidden effect which is being missed. We cannot quantify it, certainly not scientifically. So we have to address the issue scientifically, looking at other strands of evidence. Right? Laboratory experimental behaviour studies, going back to these hypothetical vignette studies, hypothetical situations. Several studies by Catherine Cross and Anne Campbell, absolutely brilliant studies. They found that in a couple of contexts, females actually prefer violence as their mode of aggression, right? Males in any situation, not just couple context, any situation where a female will be a target are self-inhibited, right? And this echoes what a study found in 2003, which also concluded that males are self-inhibited. So there's quite a lot of evidence about this. What underpins this is also now known. This is absolutely startling, right? Neuroscience and hormonal research. A team of investigators looking at evolutionarily ancient underpinnings of violent behaviour. They found that there's an evolutionarily ancient three-tier neural pathway of male self-inhibition and physical aggression produced by close proximity to a female. It is not matched in females. It's entirely male-specific. It's standalone. There's no overlap with any other memory circuitry. It's obviously evolved for that specific purpose. Something so profound, and it's evident in insects. This is something which is deep through the phylogeny and will be right up through mammals, primates, and to humans. For the hormonal basis of female couple violence, surprisingly, is oxytocin, the very hormone that promotes pair bonding. And we know there's an entirely different neurohormonal basis compared to of maternal. Yeah, this seems to be homologous with maternal aggression. As we know in mammals, females are fiercely and fearlessly defensive of their young. And we know that's got a very different neurohormonal basis compared to intersexual aggression. Evolutionary theorists link oxytocin with partner retention, right? So, as a description here of maternal aggression in mammals, quote, short latency attacks of high intensity, mostly directed toward the head/neck region without the introductory threatening behaviours typically displayed by male animals. Is that not a very good description of female perpetrated partner violence if anybody's experienced it? I certainly have. Yeah, here we go. So, partner violence appears then to be a co-option by evolution of a means to retain offspring, from a means to retain offspring to a means of retaining the means to create offspring by your partner. This sort of co-option evolution is standard, and this seems a particularly simple and fairly obvious example of that. So the difference in data according to type of couple now makes sense. Sky high partner violence rates in lesbian couples, which are in turn higher than gay couples, which in turn are also much higher than male-female couples. And the explanation of that, male-female PV, that's co-opted maternal aggression by the female, damped down by corresponding male self-inhibition, right? Gay PV, well, that's rule-bound male intersexual contest, two males together. Lesbian PV is mutual co-opted maternal aggression. So you can see the quite simple there, clear explanation of why there is that big difference. But why is partner violence like this? What's driving this? We know, we've got the behavioural studies, we know the neurohormonal stuff beneath it, but what actually explains it? We now have to look to biology. This is my big thing, of course. You have to explain bottom up from biology. The standard idea is that, it's 50-50, we're determined half by genes, half environment. This is nonsense. Basic information theory will tell you that we must have evolved to seek out a minuscule fraction of all the possible stimuli in the environment. And we've evolved to interact, to seek those out, pick them, and utilise them. So it's genes doing that. The environment's not impinging